Natus Vincere, Na'Vi, is a team which on paper looks like a super team of the CIS region. It looks like if you wanted to pick out the most skilled players you could in that region, you'd take these 5 players. And that's why Na'Vi constructed this lineup. Problem is, they have no in-game leading approach that's been successful. They built this exact lineup in an era when the coach could be the in-game leader. And so their coach, Starix, was one of the best in-game leaders in the world. He had a fantastic style that he executed, this slow map control approach to the game. He could tell everyone where they needed to be within the round because he could communicate with them. And so the reason why they brought in Simple as their 5th player to be this superstar, dominant individual player was to add more firepower to that system. The problem is, because of the change in the rules as to what you're allowed to do as a coach, coaching has been severely limited. So no coach can be an in-game leader anymore. So immediately, that system has collapsed entirely. Seized took over as the in-game leader, but he's never been effective on any level as an in-game leader. And he's someone where he really struggled to implement that slow, classic Na'Vi style, and they've had to go away from that approach overall. Then you look at the lineup, and the very fact that they have so many weapons has been a factor that has neutralized the strength of those weapons. They don't have the clear one player who every game will dominate. Simple's an extremely talented player and can be the best player in the server, but they've also got someone who was used to playing that role himself in Guardian. He used to be the AWPer. He would always be set up to get the kills. He'd always be set up to dominate. And the entire style that Zeus and Starix implemented in Na'Vi was around getting Guardian going. But now that style doesn't exist anymore. And Guardian's at sea. He doesn't necessarily know where to go. His ability level is not the same as it was years ago when he could carry the team to major finals and really deserved to be a major champion in the past. Obviously something Na'Vi as a unit has never yet accomplished despite making the final of some majors. And then you look at the lineup and someone like Flamey, he was one of the most explosive, individually scary players in the world if you go to late 2015, early 2016. But that's no longer the Flamey of today because that style came out of having Starix as his in-game leader, of having Starix as his coach, the player who was integrated by Starix into a classic system that already existed under Zeus. And so without Starix, the pieces in Na'Vi can't operate the same way as they planned to and as they did in the last lineup. Because the Na'Vi of a year and a half ago was one of the most tactically sound teams, was a very consistent team, and lived and died by this grinding, offensive style of play. The new Na'Vi doesn't have any of those factors. They have a new coach who's working with them, and he's trying to find, is there a philosophy that fits this team more, that opens them up a little bit? And yeah, they've had some games where the team looked like individually they had more impact and they got to some of the potential that they have as a team. But there's a reason this team hasn't played in the final of a big tournament the entire time of 2017. It has been a year for them that, in terms of the talent level of the team, has been a bust. And they're also a team where at the last major, okay, they made it to the quarterfinals. That looked good. They didn't make it any further. They're a team that's looking at this tournament like making the quarterfinals would be successful, making a Legends spot, getting that qualification. They're not a team where they look like themselves. They think that they can go ahead and win this major. So the star player of Na'Vi is Simple. And this is a player who legitimately might be the most mechanically skilled player to ever play Counter-Strike. Because his raw ability, his skill level is absolutely insane. I mean, it's actually quite famous when you watch him play. A lot of the top star players, they have the high skill level and they have the style of play that they're very accustomed with as to how they're going to get their kills. But on top of that, a lot of them have a very good sense for the game. And so you'll see their crosshair placement. It's always very close to the corner. They know the range they want to take a fight in. Simple doesn't even play that way. He plays with his crosshair all over the place. He plays in a very erratic manner, but his sheer skill level means that his hand-eye coordination, his ability to hit extremely precise, difficult, very high skill level shots, it's almost unparalleled in the game. He might be the best shot maker that we have in Counter-Strike at the moment. He's such a talented player, but then he has the classic curse that often comes with people who have a very naturally high skill level, which is that they can't always empathize with their teammate, that their teammate doesn't have that skill level. Their teammate can't do the things that they can do in the game. And so what seems simple to them, a situation they can put themselves in and get out of easily, their teammate might not be able to. So with Simple, the balance, kind of the limiting factor to this incredible talent has always been, how does he play with his teammates? What is his attitude like when he's working with his teammates? And that's been the area that, because the skill element of the game came to him so easily and so young, he's had to learn and develop in terms of how to be a teammate over these last few years. And it's been tough times. There've been many teams he's been in that while he was in the team, they appreciated the talent level and the ability that he brought and the firepower and what he could do for their team. But when he left the team, a lot of people would say that's one less problem to deal with now. We don't have to now figure out how we're going to get that team to work, guy to work with us in the team, how we're going to manage his attitude. And so one of his struggles in Na'Vi is that as the team has lacked the success that the Na'Vi name is accustomed to, and as he's still trying to find his place among star players like Guardian and Flamey and in a new identity for Na'Vi, he's someone where he's still trying to figure out, how do I be a good teammate but still be driven? How do I unleash all my skills? How do I be that very aggressive player, a player who thinks he's the best and therefore can take any shot and hit it, but at the same time have a break from that when I'm dead or it's halfway through the round and be able to encourage a teammate or to be able to do something in a round that sacrifices something individually to help that player get going in the game. And now the team is going to win and I can still be one of the best players in the world. And that is really Simple's dilemma. And the day Simple figures that out is probably the day that Simple becomes a major champion. So the longest standing member of Na'Vi historically is Edward, because this is a player who was there in the original Na'Vi back in 1.6 when they won all those majors. They won 4 of them in a row. But the difference between Edward of 1.6 and Edward of CSGO is that in 1.6, Edward was one of the star players. He was a very skilled player. He was famously good with his spray. He was one of the best pistol round players, and he would put up big numbers and do massive damage stats every single game. Now, in CSGO, he's one of those players who hasn't been able to have that individual impact. But rather than, as a result, be just consigned to a side note, a guy who has to play on a lower level team, who's got name value but isn't a star player, he's been able to remodel his game to become more of a supportive player. And famously, he has some of the best stats of any Na'Vi player at the majors. And that's because with this experience, with this understanding of the game that comes from playing more than a decade and playing in numerous different lineups as a star, now as a support player, he's someone who's really consistent in his output. He's someone who doesn't break under pressure, who always makes the veteran play, the savvy play. And he's the guy where I think of him, he's the epitome of the veteran to me. He's the guy where when you put him in a tough situation, he doesn't have the skill level that he can always get out of it. They can always make the best play that's so dominant and high impact. But he's the player who'll always make a smart decision, who'll always make a consistently good play. And that baseline level means that Na'Vi always knows that they have someone in the team who's not going to be up and down, who's not going to be so streaky, who's not going to just play off how their aim is going that day, who's going to be able to play out each situation because he's seen every situation 100 times before. When Flamey came into the Na'Vi lineup a couple of years ago, he was originally the problem child of the team. He was the guy who had high skill level. They needed more firepower to go along with Guardian's AWP, but he was someone where it was very hit and miss. Some games he would be fantastic. Some games he would have no impact. And it wasn't about raw aim. In terms of raw skill, he's been one of the most skilled aimers we've had in the game for a long time. It's been about understanding his role within Na'Vi and where he fits within the team and what type of Counter-Strike he's going to play. Because I've always felt like one of the problems Flamey's had as a player is that very high skill level hasn't always been channeled the right way from himself. He hasn't always understood, where am I supposed to be? What speed am I supposed to play the game at? Am I supposed to go in early here? Am I waiting for someone? And so in the past, he could have Zeus or he could have Starix trigger him in the round and set him up and tell him when to go. Now that can't happen in the team. And so now he's someone where he has to figure out his role within the team. And so you look at him as a player, and sometimes when the game's working for him, you think he could do anything in this game. He can just take over this battle. He's such a fearsome player to play against. His aim is so scary. Why isn't this a player who has dominant impact game in and game out? And so I think what you're seeing in this era of Na'Vi is Flamey's development is learning himself how to get his, as it were. Because the difference between a star player, Flamey right now is a star player. He has very high skill level. He'll have a big impact on the game, but it's within the context of what the team lets him do. So the difference between a star player and a superstar player is a superstar player doesn't need someone to tell him where to go, what situations he needs to play from. A superstar player can get his. He can figure out his comfort zone, what the boundaries of his skill level are, and what his effective style of play is. So for Flamey, part of his individual quest is to figure out himself. How does he best use himself? What's a situation where he can succeed individually, and therefore Na'vi as a team will find a greater level of success? Because as a team, they have this deep lineup of talented players who've all been very good players at different points in time, but as a unit, they're not cohesive. They don't have that one style of play that's effective like the world's best teams have. So the skill level will always give them a puncher's chance. It will always mean they're potentially a dangerous underdog, someone who can upset the top teams. But at the moment, until those 5 players come together and have a team approach that can win, they're not a team that's going to win majors and it's going to be in the final of a major.